we are not alone.
These are supposed to be some of the most verified images of giants.
People who do meditation for 60 days will lengthen their telomeres.
Soon we'll get results, and we'll let you know right here on Beyond Belief.
Things seem to be changing in the field of ufology.
It's going to be a bumpy ride.
That's priceless.
Isn't that amazing?
Tesla wanted free energy, and look what happened to him.
Plenty of evidence to show that they're real. The real question is how and why.
There were Egyptian hieroglyphs out in the outback of Australia.
In Australia.
What are the possibilities? Mars was inhabited, and these were built.
We almost can't duplicate today.
These are amazing topics. What if there was something like at Area 51 deep underwater?
They were killed by some animal.
Believe me, we're just getting started. I'm George Norrie, and we here at Gaia are committed to revealing the truth.
Better put your thinking caps on tonight. We have two big brain scientists joining us to share their latest research on topics of interest to all of us. Is there life out there in the universe somewhere? The answer is almost certainly yes. Since the launch of the James Webb Space Telescope, hardly a week goes by when we don't hear about another mind-boggling discovery by astronomers and astrophysicists, black holes, strange cosmic structures, evidence related to dark matter, new exoplanets, some of which could be prime candidates for life. But there are also investigations closer to home, right in our own backyard. Some really cool work being done focused on our sister planet, Venus. A flyby mission a few years ago suggested some form of life could exist in the upper atmosphere of our neighbor, despite the hellish conditions on the surface of Venus. Tonight, in the second half, a scientist currently working on the front lines of Venusian research joins us to share some exciting work being done now and more planned for the near future. We plan to talk to Dr. Stephen Kane about so much more, including new findings from the Webb telescope, so put on your thinking caps and maybe plan some pointed questions about the wild blue yonder. But before that, one of the best-known scientists in the country, maybe in the world, Dr. Travis Taylor, is here. You might know him best from television, specifically from the History Channel's hit series, The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. Over the past 4 years, Travis has been a principal investigator of that strange piece of property in northeastern Utah. Season 4 of the series kicks off 2 nights from now on April 18th, and I've already heard of bits and pieces of the stuff that's coming. Like many of you, I can't wait to see it. Dr. Taylor joins us in a few minutes with a look ahead, a review of what the team has managed to uncover so far, where their work is headed, along with a few surprises, we hope. And I plan to also ask about that other hat that he wore for a while as chief scientist for the Pentagon's UAP task force. The work of that group, which was headed by a highly respected intelligence officer who worked for the Navy, the DIA, and in other capacities. His name is Jay Stratton. He and Travis Taylor not only worked together on the UAP task force, but also teamed up at a technology company based in Rocket City, Huntsville, Alabama, a company that specializes in reverse engineering. Now, makes you wonder what those two guys might be tinkering with down south there. We'll ask, see what he says. Dr. Taylor joins us in just a few minutes. I am really looking forward to this. Dr. Travis Taylor, welcome for the first time to Coast AM.
Oh, thank you very much, George. I'm happy to be here.
You just got back from the ranch, right? I mean, I really appreciate you staying up late. I know you've been on the road, so you're fresh back from Utah.
Yeah, I actually flew back yesterday morning, so I've only been home I haven't been quite home for 24, 30 hours, something like that.
I got to see you at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and it's amazing how many people would still ask, and I watched the comments online as well, that people that think this is all, just a made-for-TV show. It's not really an investigation. Address that for us, if you will.
Well, yeah, so first of all, it's not a television show. It is a scientific investigation that's being documented for television. Those are two different approaches. A television show implies all the things of a television show where you have scripts and you have things that are contrived or made up or whatever. That is not at all what's happening at Skinwalker Ranch and on the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. Everything you see is in the moment. It's It's real. It's what our sensors gather. And in fact, we're still shaking our heads, scratching our heads, and going through data and trying to figure out what some of the things were that we saw 2 years ago, much less last year, much less this weekend. So that's the way science is. It's going to take a while for us to figure it all out, but what we can figure out and get in front of the public, I mean, that's what we're doing. You know, part of the scientific method is to report your results. Well, we're reporting our results as quickly and in openly manner as we possibly can, and that's through the secret of Skinwalker Ranch.
Would you give me your assessment of what, if any, progress you and the team have made in the years that you've been at the ranch? Broad strokes, obviously.
Well, the first thing was to determine if the phenomena was real or not. You know, we were really backloaded. I mean, we weren't really front-loaded with a lot of information from the Bigelow era team. They still hold a lot of that close to their vest, other than the public things like the books and so on. But and we've spoken to them, but we had to decide for ourselves if we thought the phenomena was real. Well, I would say 100% now. 4 years of research has showed us we absolutely know the phenomena is real. Might even be multiple phenomena, but we can't determine that yet. And then the next step will be to determine what the phenomena is. And that's, it's really difficult because from yourself, from being exposed to the research from the past, that it doesn't just show up every day on Tuesday at 9 a.m. so we can go set up everything and be ready for it. I mean, it happens when it happens.
You know that the challenge, too, is it's not replicatable. I mean, a lot of the stuff that happens, it happens once and it doesn't happen again, which is a major challenge for science, right?
Yeah. It's a completely different type of research. I mean, you have to realize that any chance you get to collect data, you have to collect the data then. It doesn't matter what time of day, what type of circumstance, because you don't know when it's going to happen again or even if it's going to happen again. And most of the time, it doesn't happen again in the same way. It's kind of like there's an insane asylum there that's choosing all the things to do every day. And that's why people have a hard time understanding why don't we already have the answer? We've been there all this time. Why aren't you telling us everything? Well, we're telling you everything that we can pretty much tell you. I mean, that we can figure out. Anything else that we would, say would probably just, guesses and speculation.
Are you the guy who designs the tests and experiments? Am I correct in saying that you are, in essence, poking and prodding largely because you want to generate a response from whatever it is to see what happens?
Yeah, so Eric Bard is the full-time there, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I think he actually goes home on Christmas. But he is the principal investigator and was, 3 years before I got there. And he is mainly over all of the main decisions or whatever as far as the research program. But he's more of a much more of an observationalist. And so they brought me on because my expertise was in experimental physics and experimental concepts. And so Eric and I'll sit down and brainstorm, and then I'll come up with ways to do experiments and things that we can test and things that we can move forward with. And then once we figure out the details of the experiment, then we go and we, pitch the cost to both Brandon and the network and try to get cost sharing going there, and then try to find the resources to do it, put the resources in place, and then perform the experiments. And so there's a lot of logistics and effort involved in something like this. And, I don't think people quite realize that they will, once the show starts airing this season, because there was one experiment that I counted had 1,016 moving parts, and there was probably 100 people around helping us keep all those parts in the air and moving.
Wow. I don't know how much you can say about what's coming in the next season, but let's go ahead and take a stab at it. Give me the broad strokes, some surprise guests. Can we assume?
Yes, we had some surprise guests. I don't know if I'm allowed to say any of that yet, so I have to err on the side of caution there. But you'll find out really soon, and I think just 2 days now. But we did 14. Well, there'll be 14 episodes that are the compilation of at least 14 big experiments with some other small experiments scattered through it. And they're all coupled and linked and build on each other in ways that we didn't realize until halfway through what we were doing. And what I will tell you is a key thing we discovered in the last year, and it's actually we kind of hinted on it in the earlier experiments in the first 3 years, but we really discovered there's some sort of time-based anomaly that's occurring on the ranch very often, whether it's something is spoofing the clocks and all the equipment or time itself is actually being confused, we can't determine yet. But there is definitely some sort of time factor in what's going on there.
Well, that's intriguing. We talked about the difficulty in things not being repeatable or replicatable. It feels strangely elusive, too, doesn't it? I mean, transitory radiation, for example. I mean, you can testify personally the radiation was real because it affected you.
Yes, I had all the symptoms, classic symptoms of radiation, gamma ray radiation exposure. I saw 4 different physicians. 2 of them were experts in radiation exposures, and talked to an oncologist as well afterwards. And it was real symptoms of gamma ray exposure. My gamma ray detector detected gamma ray radiation, and it also knocked out many electronic components near me when it happened. And we have since put gamma ray detectors in random locations on the ranch, and some of them have had huge spikes, even more than one that I got hit with. And then, major spikes. We don't know where they're coming from. And some of them, read normal things. So it's a random situation. And, how do you prepare for something like that? You can't. I mean, it's kind of like, it's not even really like combat, because at least combat, there's a bad guy out there that's shooting at you. And this thing, we don't know what's causing this, and it's randomly occurring. As far as we can tell, it's random. And so how do you prepare for something like that? We just measure diligently, and if we see high readings, we evacuate.
I mean, normally, if you've got something radioactive, a piece of metal or something with uranium from a shell or something, it's radiation is detectable. It should still be there. But this radiation is there 1 minute, and then it's gone. I mean,
That's
how do you explain that?
I don't know how to explain that. We've had various speculations. If there's something, Jack Sarfati, I don't know if your listeners know much about him, but he's a fairly well-known theoretical physicist, and he has a theory that he has told me believes that it was a UFO, like a Tic Tac or some sort of warp drive concept, and that as it's moving in one direction, it accelerates the light that passes by it in the other direction to up towards the gamma rays. And he believes that, I may have been by one that may have passed by. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, it is a speculation. We are looking for ways to test for that. But that's a speculation. And there are other possibilities. If there was some kind of traversable wormhole, you might have a similar effect near the mouth of it that would accelerate standard radio waves up to gamma rays or something, and it could have caused it. But that seems like it would have been a much bigger effect instead of just like a small tight beam that affected me and didn't affect guys that were 10 feet away from me.
Does it feel like there is an intelligence behind it, or more than one intelligence?
Sometimes it does. It seems like it's predicting what we're about to do, and it'll shift so that what we do is ineffective. Where one day we find a telltale sign, and we go with a better piece of equipment back to that same telltale sign, and now it's moved or it's changed the way it's functioning, and so we don't measure it the right way with this new piece of equipment we bring out. Or we're wanting to dig or do some demolition or move something that needs a heavy piece of equipment. And we always get brand new equipment, brand new batteries, and all that type of stuff. And it seems like every time we do that, the equipment malfunctions, the batteries die, the electronic systems in the equipment are zapped somehow.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It's a frustrating place. We're talking with Dr. Travis Taylor. We're going to take a break here and come back with more about the secret of Skinwalker Ranch. We're talking with Dr. Travis Taylor about the upcoming Secret of Skinwalker Ranch Season 4, which debuts April 18th. If you saw Season 3, you know, right there toward the end, there's some really interesting activity at the ranch. They'd been digging into Skinwalker Ridge and struck something. And the drill bit came out with some really interesting material that suggests there might be some kind of a manufactured artificial object inside that ridge. I don't know if we can get Travis to kick any secrets our way about how that mystery, that part of the story might be addressed this coming season, but we'll give it a try here in the next segment. Stick around. As you know, Travis, when you tell people about equipment failures, batteries dying, those who are skeptical and don't want to believe anything is real there would say, aha, that's very convenient. I just remember back during NIDS, during the Bigelow era, and then during Bass, you know, they put these cameras up on telephone poles with a wide view of the ranch, and it seemed like no matter where they aimed them, the principal events would happen just outside of camera range. They'd carry equipment around on the ground, the batteries would drain, equipment would die, anything that could go wrong did, and people would say, oh, yeah, sure, how convenient. Now, you guys have cameras there on the ground, TV cameras that are documenting a lot of the kinds of problems that those guys had, and you're seeing it for yourself. It's really strange. You'd have to say it's just not coincidental, right?
Oh, it's absolutely not coincidental. It happens so many times. It's beyond statistical variation. I mean, we have memory cards on a daily basis that the data gets scrambled or completely erased. We have the big $30,000 to $70,000 television camera systems. They that are modern technology. You know, they will just stop functioning. We have smaller, cheap cameras, you know, in the hundreds to a few $1,000s kind of range that the memory gets wiped or the cameras just shut off for no reason. Cell phone batteries, you can take it right off of the charger and say 100%, and 5 minutes later you'll look and it'll be completely dead and turned off. And we've had car batteries do that. We've had bulldozer batteries. In fact, we changed batteries on a bulldozer 3 times in one morning, and with brand new batteries. And every time we hooked it up, the batteries instantly were dead. So this is something that, you know, people can say, oh, it's convenient for TV or whatever, but anytime, just ask the experts that we've brought out that are contractors that we just paid to come do a job. And when they come out, and every one of them, I don't think we've ever had one in 4 years now get there and say, oh, it's just another day at the office. No, every time they say, I've never had anything like this in the world happen to me after 25 years of doing this particular kind of job.
You know, one of the part of the lore of the ranch is about digging, and I can tell you where that started. It was with the rancher who was there before Bigelow. I called him Tom Gorman in our book, but you know what his name is. And he had been told when he bought the property, hey, before you do any digging, you got to let me know. And he just thought it was odd at the time. And then he would notice when he would do any kind of digging at all, that would get a reaction. It would often get a reaction. And I know when you guys came in, you thought, oh, that's, you know, that makes no sense or something. But there is a little something to it, right?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure, you know, if it's a direct causation, but there absolutely seems to be a correlation when we're digging with intent. Now, there's different kind of digging. You know, it's a ranch. You know, there's post holes, there's pipelines, there's cables, there's whatever you need for daily operation of living on a ranch, and that never seems to be an issue. But it's when you're digging with intent to look for something or find something or dig something up it's directed at trying to figure out what's happening here at the ranch, as opposed to just daily operations and maintenance. There seems to be something that tries to interfere with that. And I know that sounds crazy, but statistically, we see the equipment fail, We see people have physiological reactions. Some of them have even ended up in the hospital with sudden heart issues or sudden catatonia or sudden reactions that are dangerous brain kind of hemorrhages. It's really odd, and we can't say that this causes that, but they sure do correlate with each other an awful lot beyond just being a statistical oddity.
The injuries have been real. There's no question about that. Yours was, and others have as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the most shocking and bizarre thing is, to what purpose is that? What is it that, if there really is some sort of intelligence that doesn't want us to dig there, why? What's buried there that they don't want us to find?
Toward the end of the last season, you guys had been drilling into the ridge, and you hit something. And I recall at a public event some weeks ago, you were openly discussing some of the results. Can you share some of that with us now?
Yeah, sure. We were drilling into the mesa where we had some data suggest and some stories suggest this might be a point of interest. And we get a horizontal drill rig that's got a carbide diamond tipped bit that's hard, and the guy says it should go through granite, and they've drilled through steel reinforced concrete. And we get to a point that it won't drill through anything at about 100 feet inside the mesa, and it keeps bouncing off of it and chattering against something extremely hard. He says he's never felt anything like it, and the track that it takes to sort of a semicircle underneath it, like it's we kind of described it when we looked at it. If you had the bottom edge of a plate turned up sideways, you take a dinner plate and turn it up sideways, the drill bit tracked out a path, kind of like the body was hitting the bottom of that and being pushed around it. And these pieces of metal came out, lots of it. We had many gallon Ziploc bags filled with this stuff, and we took it to the University of Utah to have them do mass spectrometry, X-ray, elemental analysis, scanning electron microscopy, all the different things we could test it. And the materials came back. They were not anything natural. The scientists there at University of Utah said that it was absolutely a manufactured material. And the odd thing is that it was some weird elements. On one side, it was almost pure tellurium. In the middle was a 50-50 almost mix of iron and aluminum, which is something we don't mix. And then on the other side was almost pure europium. And I find that really odd that you've got these kinds of materials that are semiconductor and possibly superconducting in certain situation materials around a conductor material. That to what end, and how did it get in that dadgum mesa 100 feet in? It makes no sense.
Is europium something that's found in the basin, as far as you know?
No, europium and tellurium both are, they're abundant in asteroids, and we mine them because we use them in tellurium we use in solar cells and other microelectronics, and europium, it has certain properties that we use in certain types of microelectronics, and they're not rare, but they're not everywhere either. And there's not, to my knowledge, there aren't any big tellurium or europium mines in Utah. and yeah, that's the weird thing. But why it's manufactured though? It's a thin layer coated on one side of this metal substrate, a thin layer on the other side. And that, by the way, it brings up something, George. I have to correct you. This is not the first time I've ever been on Coast to Coast. Back in the 90s, I was on Coast to Coast with Art Bell because I was a scientist that was investigating Art's parts for Linda Howe.
Ah, wow.
And one of the first scientists to study the layered materials on that. And what's really interesting is these materials, while they're different elements that we've pulled out of the Mesa on the Ranch, they look very similar.
In terms of the layering, then?
Yes, in terms of the layering, like Art's parts, yeah.
Is it, where this is leading, the suggestion that there's some kind of a manufactured object, maybe an advanced object, that's stuck in that mesa?
Yeah, that's where that's what at least the current limited evidence we have would suggest, and I'll tell you, we got a lot more evidence last summer, and we did do some more drilling, but other than that, I can't spoil it for you. But I will tell you what we find is very exciting.
Toward the end of last season, I recall seeing you come up with a pretty interesting theory about maybe there's a connection to asteroid or meteor impacts that maybe that could explain the distribution of some of these materials, that there are other places around the globe that where there's been additional reports of strange activity that were, in fact, asteroid or meteor impact sites. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so I did a study on meteorite, asteroid or comet impacts, whatever, impact sites around the globe over the last, 100 million years or something like that. And really interesting is there are a lot of sites where there were religious stories took place there, or there were other sites where there were UFO sightings often. There were strange things that had happened there, and it looks like the Uinta Basin was created there was an impact there of some like 50 or 60 million years ago or something. But the question is that just correlation? Is it just, coincidence? I'm not a real big fan of coincidences, but what is it that crashed there? Maybe it was something that crashed there, and then that was of interest, and somebody else came to look and see what it was. Maybe they wanted it, and then maybe they left something behind that causes some of these strange phenomena, or maybe they're actively looking at it now, and that's why some people see UFOs going in and out of mountains and things like that. That's all speculation, of course, but we've got a lot of anecdotal evidence, and now a lot of real hard scientific evidence that there's some kind of phenomena taking place at a lot of these kinds of locations.
As you know, UFO reports, UAP reports, is what drew Bigelow and his team there with NIDS in the first place, what attracted OSAP and the DIA. It's a primary interest of yours as well. I remember the first time I got to interview you, you told me you'd never seen a UAP until you got to the ranch, and now you've seen a heck of a bunch of them, haven't you?
Yes, I have. In fact, that is exactly right. I'd never seen a UFO or a UAP of any form, not even ball lightning. I mean, I'd seen thunderstorms with lightning and plasma balls in a lab, but nothing that you would call a UAP, even if it was a natural phenomenon that fit in that category. Certainly no nuts and bolts UFO type things. And when I got to the ranch within a couple of weeks of being there, we saw without a doubt this translucent sphere appear in the sky over the ranch. It just appear for probably 2 or 3 minutes and then just vanish without moving. And then we've seen many more. We've seen black amorphous UAP over a cow as it died. Seen them flying over the mesa. We've seen them. We've captured video in infrared. We've captured microwave signals when they occur. We've even seen some changes in the entire radio spectrum when some of these things occur. So it's real scientific evidence that something is occurring. Now,
Can we
the question is,
what are they?
Well, what are they? That's the big question. What are they? Are they craft with beings in it? Are they, spy portals from some other realm or distant location? Are they something new that Mother Nature's cooked up that we don't understand yet? Are they some magic technology that our near peers like Russia or China has come up with? Honestly, I think the last one is the most ridiculous one, because the physics that some of these things are doing would suggest that these other countries had spent billions and billions of dollars in a Manhattan Project level effort, and we don't see evidence of that.
As far as we know, what you've seen, drones and balloons do not explain what's been recorded on camera.
I challenge most people to keep drones flying in the air over Skinwalker Ranch, because almost every time we bring drones out, we have many malfunctions. The batteries run dead. A lot of times, GPS doesn't function on the ranch like it does anywhere else, and the drones think they're completely different places, and they'll crash because they think they've already landed and turn off at 50 feet in the air, or they won't take off because they think they're 100 feet below the surface. It's just the strangest things like that, and so yeah, it's not balloons or drones that we're seeing out there. Absolutely not.
I've seen enough of the shows to know that you got a lot of rocket power on that ranch. Could you shoot one down, or is that giving something away?
Well, I don't want to go into So as we've said, these things are random as it appears. We can't predict when they're going to be. So what do you think the odds would be of us actually being able to hit one with a rocket? And that's really not why we're launching the rockets. The rockets are a test of. We send up sensors to get them to certain altitudes and see what happens as the instruments come back down themselves, because they follow physics of aerospace engineering that we understand very well. And the rockets will, over the triangle area, for example, they statistically avoid a certain region in the sky, even if it's doing the opposite of what the aerodynamics would have the rocket do. And that's one of the tests that we've really, you'll see we went way out of our way to verify that this last summer, and there is absolutely something over the triangle that is anomalous and unusual.
I am a non-scientist, so just from my uninformed opinion, all these rocket tests that you've done, it's almost like you're trying to outline the boundaries or outer limits of something that's up there, that's always there. Is that going too far?
Exactly right. Yes, that's exactly right. So imagine you had a target that was an invisible target out in your yard, and you could put a dartboard behind it, and you just keep throwing darts. And then you look at the board later and you realize there's a hole in the middle of where the darts should have landed on their target, then there was something in the way that was making the darts move around it or miss it. And that's kind of what we're doing, and trying to get enough of them thrown up there that we can get a statistical picture of what we're looking at.
Is anyone else watching you? I know I've asked this of Brandon Fugel, the owner of the ranch, a few times, whether or not there's government surveillance of what you're doing. Is there anybody speaking with a Russian accent or Chinese who's on the periphery watching what you're up to?
Well, George, I really I don't want to talk about that and speculate, because if they are, then, and we knew it, then it would be giving it away. But if they are and we don't know it, then it would be a pure guess. But I will tell you that we have, and we showed this on the show either last year or the year before that we detected that something was recording our conversations and rebroadcasting the conversations on different frequencies that we were not doing. And so that something is listening and watching, whether it is one of our near peers or some private citizens or something else. But the technology that we detected didn't appear to be any technology that we understood. It didn't look like just a standard, listening device, a bug or something retransmitting. It was something completely different. And that was really odd. And it's happened more than once.
Dr. Travis Taylor, we'll come back to Skinwalker Ranch in a bit. I want to ask some questions about you. I remember knowing in general that you had started at a young age working for the U.S. government in various capacities. I had no idea how many degrees you had, how many books you had written, or how many of these programs you had started working at a young age. Can you give us a little bit of bio info when you started?
Yeah. So when I was senior in high school in 1985 to 86, I won the Alabama State Science Paper Competition. I built a radio telescope in my backyard that picked up radio waves from black holes and supernovas and things like that. And the first prize of the thing was a summer job with the U.S. Army in a directed energy weapons lab. And so I worked there for that summer with the Army, and they liked my work enough that they offered me a job. They said they'd pay my way through school if I would work a quarter and then go to school a quarter. it's called the Cooperative Education Program back then, and they paid my way through school, paid all my books and all that stuff, and I worked for them ever since. I worked the first round up until I got my first master's and then my first PhD, and got a job opportunity outside of the government at that point to go and do some other space and intelligence community work. And so I went outside the government for 8 years. And then in 2007, I got an offer from the government to come back that I couldn't refuse. And thank goodness I did, because I went back to work there with the U.S. Army Space and Missile Defense Command. And through that interaction, I met and with the Skinwalker Ranch interactions, I met the director of the UAP Task Force and got chosen to work on that work. So it all kind of led to one thing led to another, I guess.
All high school kids, I guess, get to work on, direct energy weapons labs. That's pretty standard for the course, right? So you did work on classified programs, sensitive stuff along the way.
Oh, yeah, since I was a teenager, really, I've done that, and so I guess I've got about 35 years of experience, and had a security clearance about longer in my life than I didn't have one.
Wow, geez. I don't know how you had time to get all these degrees. Are you getting more, or are you done?
No, I'm actually working on a third PhD right now in sort of a new. I'm working on a sort of a new idea program with the local university here, University of Alabama, Huntsville, in the physics department. That while it's not just going to come right out and say it's the things you'd need to understand UAP physics, it's basically a physics area of concentration that would be the things you would need to understand UAP physics.
I was absolutely astonished when Radiance Technologies put out that release about hiring you. They're based in your hometown. They're a major defense contractor with offices in 17 states. They do really great work, a highly regarded company both by the employees and by the government. And they had hired, and they don't shy away from mentioning your interest in the UFOs or Skinwalker Ranch, and they did the same thing with a guy named Jay Stratton, who was the head of the UAP task force, who worked on other programs, UAP related, and then you guys worked together there at Radiance. What are you up to?
Well, I mean, we're working for a company, a high technology company that the job is to find great work to do that will make the company money, and of course our expertise has been in government research, intelligence community research, that sort of thing, and that's what we're applying it to. And of course, it is a company that's made a big business out of reverse engineering or foreign materials exploitation, FME as it's called, foreign materials assessment, FMA, and that means if we had a Russian doohickey or a Chinese doohickey or some other foreign equipment, we reverse engineer how it works and try to understand it and see if the knowledge could help us, in future situations. So if there were other technologies to reverse engineer, I think we'd be the perfect place to do that.
Yeah, something really foreign. So, I jokingly asked your company president, I met him last June, and that's when you and I saw each other down there in Huntsville, and I asked him, well, are you guys taking apart some UFOs, or would you go after a contract like that? He didn't blink. He said, oh, yeah, sure we would.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, if we had a customer that wanted us to help them with something like that, that's, it'd be absolutely right up our alley. I mean, we understand how to reverse engineer at least technology that we can find here on Earth in various situations. So if we were to find something, I think it would be it'd certainly be a worthful endeavor, and it would be an exciting research project. That's for sure.
Tell me about being asked to work on the UAP task force by Jay Stratton. He created it, in essence. He put it all together. Was it in part because of the work you're doing, the investigation on Skinwalker, that you came to his attention, or did he know about you otherwise?
Well, apparently he knew about me, but I didn't know about him. The first year I was out at Skinwalker Ranch, the first few weeks, I detected some signals that made me nervous that it was potentially some bad guys doing some bad things. So I went and reported it to security, and kept going up the chain. And then I got a call. Some folks said, "Hey, we need to go brief this office in the Pentagon." And so I went and briefed the office in the Pentagon, and there was a guy there that came in, and after we were done, he asked everybody else to leave, and he had a copy of my book that I wrote, Alien Invasion, which was a serious study on what we would do from a military and intelligence community standpoint, and even a civil standpoint, if we were invaded by aliens. And that's pretty bleak, but and what we should be doing to prepare. But anyway, he said, "Hey, I'm Jay Stratton. I'm the director of the UAP Task Force, and here's what we're doing, and we appreciate the brief, and would you like to come help us solve the problem, work on this problem?" I was like, "Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I've been wanting to do that, my whole life. This is a dream come true."
The report that came out of the UAP task force, it's mandated by Congress towards the end of the year. And then, right at the time when the really hardcore work on that report gets underway, Jay Stratton, who'd headed the task force, gets yanked out of there for whatever reason. You guys put together a report. I thought it was terrific. I mean, it's broad strokes. You got a lot of numbers in there, not specifics about the cases, but you can read between the lines. And I think Congress did, and the public did to a large degree. The UAP public, that's another matter altogether. Can you talk in general, without violating any kind of laws or confidentiality statutes, about what you saw while working there? What kinds of evidence exists that the public has not seen? Was it persuasive to you that this is legit?
Yeah, well, what I can tell you is that we had a lot of data from a lot of different sources, but we were only studying data taken from credible military sources. We did talk to the FAA about some commercial things and to NASA about some of their civil things, but we had better, pristine chain of custody data from fighter planes, military assets, and so on, military equipment. And so we stuck mostly to that because we knew where the data came from, and we could track it, and we could then investigate what it meant. And we had many. I mean, we talked about 144 cases specifically in the report, and only one of them turned out that we could prove turned out to be a balloon. The rest of them, there was not enough data to say that it was this thing or that thing. And there was a lot of data that suggested it was much more than some things that people want to, debunk or throw away. But we can't talk about some of the data because it was taken with classified instruments, of course. And so that's why, a lot of people can go after and say, well, what did they do? They had all this time, and they just this is the best they could do, was this 9-page report or whatever it was. Well, the report has there was a lot more to it than that, but that's not what got released to the public, and for good reason. I mean, think about it. If an F-35 is capturing something with any instrument on it, heck, everything on F-35, even I think the color of the paint's classified. So, I mean, you can see it became a difficult thing having every piece of data was at a different kind of classification even. So we couldn't even stick all the data together and do like a data trend analysis across data sets. It was a difficult task to do in 1 year.
The UFO public will never be happy with whatever comes out. They're always going to be griping about something. They don't like the images that have been released. It's all grainy. There's got to be something better. Obviously there are no IMAX movie cameras on F-18s. They do have thermal imaging systems. That's some of the images that the public has now seen from pretty famous cases. Can you say anything about other images that you may have had access to without giving away the store? Is there better stuff that we haven't seen that maybe Congress or somebody else has seen?
Well, I can't really say specifics, but what I can say is we had 144 cases we studied that were taken from military systems. And, I think, 3 have been released from 3 videos or so have been released from the public. So I guess you can infer from that whatever you want to infer. But, of course, there's more data out there.
You've seen the work of the debunkers. The East Coast incidents have been described as they must be balloons and drones. The West Coast warship, the 10 warships that were buzzed by 100 objects in July 2019. You've seen the debunking attempts there. You would consider both of those places, the cases that came out of those, as still genuine unknowns?
Yeah, absolutely. They were certainly genuine unknowns. And then I've just decided that I'm not even going to listen to the debunkers or even talk about them, because they don't have all the data. They didn't get to see all the data, and it wouldn't matter. Like you said, the UFO could land on their doorstep, and they would debunk it away as swamp gas reflecting light from Venus. It doesn't really matter. My dad always tells me the Benjamin Franklin statement of a man convinced against his will is that another opinion still. So you're not going to change their mind, and I'm not going to. So I'm not in it. What I'm in it for is study the science and release the information. Get the information into the scientific community for peer review, for discussion, for the general public to get to review as best they can, as best I can. And that's kind of what the secret of Skinwalker Ranch is. We're reporting our work in pretty much very real time, open to everybody. So it's something that people are just going to have to learn, that it's going to take some time for us to figure this out.
Are you encouraged by the interest of Congress? There's a hearing coming up this week. Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, who was down there in Huntsville for at least a while. I don't know if you know him or not, but are you encouraged, and do you think that congressional interest will actually go somewhere?
Well, I certainly hope it will, and I hope it has enough pull and push in both directions, that it forces that the money gets appropriated, the funds get expended in appropriate places, and not just in places so that everything kind of goes away quietly, nobody ever discovers anything, and it just dies a quiet death and people forget about it. I think the general public is done with, the many hundreds of programs that are all of them that come out and say, oh, there's nothing to see here, there's nothing to see here, when we know you can't hide it from the general public anymore, because anybody can buy scientific equipment at such a low cost and measure things for themselves. So,
well, I guess
I'm encouraged, yes.
Senator Gillibrand, who's heading this committee that's having the hearing this week, she seemed pretty ticked off that the Pentagon had found a way to not fully fund Arrow, that they've been sort of dragging their feet. We know the Air Force has been sort of reluctant to come to the table. So I think we're all hopeful that they're called on the carpet and maybe can get it funded, fully funded, and they can get on with it. But you bring up an interesting point. Private citizens, private groups can do a heck of a lot of this work on their own. Private companies like Radiance, for example, right?
Sure. The work at Skinwalker Ranch is all privately funded. So, and I'd say we've got as much public data as anybody's collected with real hard scientific instruments. And I'm not saying other people haven't, but I'm just saying we've got at least as much as anybody else has done, if not more. And it's doable. Now, it can get expensive, but there are a lot of people out there with deep pockets. If they really want to know the answer to this, somebody's going to have to step up and just do it, because I'm not so sure that the government infrastructure is actually is designed in a way that they can tell everything that they discover just from national security reasons, and people are just going to have to accept that, and we're going to have to figure out how, as a culture and society, to get to the answer ourselves without expecting the government to take care of everything for us and just say, here it is, we're going to spoon feed you the answer. I think we're going to have to do the hard work ourselves.
You would say that the public is ready for whatever it is. I guess, it's a tough question to answer because we don't know what the answer is. We don't know what it is yet.
Yeah, I would say that, the public is at least capable of handling it. You know, there are all the reports and studies that suggest, oh well, the stock exchange will go crazy, people will freak out, won't go to work. You know, I kind of have a different view on that. I think certainly even if it turned out to be, and I'm being, you know, facetious on this a little bit, but if it turned out to be there's going to be a war between angels and demons, I want to know about it so I can at least be prepared somewhat. You know, is there something I can do to be prepared? I don't know. Civil defense. You know, if a tornado's coming, I want to know that it's coming, and I want to go get in a storm shelter. You know, and if you know there's going to be a tornado season, you can find a safe place to be your tornado shelter when it does arrive. And if we wait till it happens, you know, it might be too late. So I think the public has some rights to know at least if something could be a possibility. Now, I certainly wouldn't want to release information that could give away an advantage if there were a conflict to come.
Well, I think when the Independence Day scenario unfolds, I might have to come to your house because you sound like the guy who could make a direct energy weapon and enough to ward them off for a while in your backyard. You've been out on the ranch, so I didn't know if you saw this news over the last couple of days, but the commander of the U.S. Space Force comes out and makes these remarkable, I mean, jarring comments that the UAP issue is real, it's global, it's going to require international cooperation. I was pleasantly surprised. I don't know, did you get to hear those comments?
Well, I've read the transcripts on a news article on the internet, and I thought that was fascinating myself. Yeah, that we've actually had a government official in a different, you know, one of the different services come out and say, "Hey, this is a real, and it's like you said, a global thing." I think it's fascinating.
You know, you hear the same stories that I hear. You probably hear more of them than I do about whistleblowers, about what's been told to members of Congress, to Arrow, to Sean Kirkpatrick behind closed doors. You mentioned about doing analysis of Art's parts many years ago. You know, I hear those stories from people with degrees like yours who've been in classified programs. Some of them have reportedly told their story about UFO legacy programs. Is there anything you could say about any of that? Do you happen to think that there are whistleblowers who've given that kind of information that's legit? And do you think that there might be stashes of metamaterials or technology that is not made by us?
Well, I do know that some of the whistleblowers that have briefed are absolutely credible individuals, and I believe that they at least believe that this was the case that happened to them. If they weren't somehow being, you know, tricked or duped, and I don't see that being the case. And so I'm kind of stuck like you are, George. I don't know how to answer that. I don't know what I mean. Because if some of what these whistleblowers are saying is true, then there's been stuff going on all along, and somebody has been living outside of any kind of oversight, working on these things. And the only way that could be is if people are just not answering to anyone in Congress, or they're keeping it totally in the private sector. So I really don't know how to respond to that. I mean, I kind of leaning on the side that I think it is true.
Some of these guys are saying they're going to go public at some point. Boy, that, you know, it's amazing the amount of change that's happened in just a couple of years. It's just amazing on this subject.
Yeah, had you asked me this before I started working at Skinwalker Ranch, I would have probably said, no, I don't believe it's true. But now that's not the case.
You know, one of the weirdest, strangest, unsettling parts that you discovered last year was these GPS monitors that would, you know, that was, I still don't understand what was going on with that. Something was definitely interfering, right?
Oh, absolutely. Somehow or other, there's a phenomena or a technology being deployed on the ranch that can change GPS at will and make it be above ground, below ground, somewhere completely different, even in a different state, and it seems to only happen within the boundaries of the fence of the property, which that makes no sense.
Over the decades, people who live in the basin, not just on the ranch, but people who live in the wider basin, have reported all kinds of strange creatures out there, things that should not exist. We know that the family that lived there before Bigelow would report trickster type activity on the property. You can, compare it to poltergeist, not saying they are ghosts or anything like that, but just really weird stuff that does not seem to be connected to UFOs, yet it's happened there for a long time. Seems like the phenomena comes in waves and changes over time. Like, you haven't had any creature sightings there while you've been there, have you? And also animal mutilations that used to happen a lot. I don't hear them anymore. Has it changed?
Maybe it has. Maybe it has. George, I have a hypothesis on that, and that it's not that it's actually Bigfoot or dire wolves or ghosts or monsters crawling out of portals, as much as it might be how the individuals, their particular brains process the information they're receiving, and that's the best their brain could come up with to see whatever weirdness was actually happening. And to me, that fits the model of science better, in that it doesn't have to be, a cryptid one day and a ghost another day and a UFO another day. It's just something weird that our brains just can't kind of get to the bottom of.
So it's an effect from being exposed to some kind of energy or technology, as opposed to being actual creatures.
That's a hypothesis. I'm still working on how to test it, but I think it would explain it a lot more simply than having to come up with 30 different hypotheses for 30 different phenomena.
Well, some of these phenomena are physical. I mean, some of the things that have happened at the ranch are definitely physical. What's carving up those cows that happened under the Shermans or the Gormans, that was real.
Yeah, no, I agree. There is a real aspect to it. Don't get me wrong. In fact, we've had 2 cows die and of unknown causes, and this baffled the veterinarians and the veterinary scientists that came out and looked at them. And one of them, when it after it died, no predators or scavengers or even insects would touch it. And it's been there for 3 years, and it's just kind of looks like it's mummified because none of the predators will touch it. So it's weird. I don't know what to say about it.
Are you able to interact with the Ute tribe? I mean, the tribal land surrounds the whole place. The ranch has, their cooperation has been tough to get sometimes over the years by different groups.
We've reached out to them and we speak to them, and they've sent some liaisons onto the ranch as well as the Navajo Nation, and we haven't asked for permission to go on their property yet, but we have invited them to come on to Brandon's property, and some have, and have been very nice and cordial, explaining things to us from their cultural perspective, and it's been very enlightening. So I don't think there is an active approach to keep us from understanding what they believe is going on there, but at the same time, I also don't want to muddy up any waters or social issues trying to take data over on their property if they don't want us there. And they haven't told us they do or don't, as far as I know.
All right. That's good to hear. I guess the last question is something along these lines, Travis. Is it solvable? I mean, is it possible that maybe at the end of it, you could go 5 more years and you still won't know if there's an intelligence behind what's going on at Skinwalker?
Yeah, George, that's a really good question, and I think it could be very possible because this phenomena is so bizarre and so elusive, it's really difficult to get detailed and a lot of data on it. But who knows? Maybe we'll find some Rosetta Stone somehow that enables us to interpret what's going on and make contact.
You look at the big picture. You've been shooting rockets and doing experiments, poking and prodding to get a reaction from it. It's sort of doing the same thing with you guys, and it has been at Skinwalker and in that basin for a long time. It throws something at you, changes the rules, muddies the waters. It seems to be getting a reaction as well.
Yeah, the big question is which one, who's the rat and who's the scientist, right?
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that we're not the lab rats, and it's just playing with us.
Well, it's hard to believe, it's hard for us to accept that there's something up on the food chain that's smarter than us, and it could be that.
Oh, it absolutely could be that. I mean, that is one possible solution to the problem, and until we can accept that, then I think we'll never be able to find the answer. Mother Nature could have come up with something that we have never been able to interpret or think of before. Or it could be something even from a whole other universe, or something from something else we haven't even considered, like a simulation hypothesis, some kind of avatar from some kid in somebody's basement playing a game with us. You never know.
Dr. Travis Taylor, thanks so much. I know you had a long road trip and it's late for you, but thanks for sticking up with us and this late. And we'll be watching Secret of Skinwalker Ranch when season 4 starts. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me, George. Thank you very much.
The Coast mobile app is now available for download on iPhones and Android devices. You can become an insider directly through this app. This is a great option for our international listeners, and new users will also receive a free 2-week trial.